Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and I've got Gregory Kasunich with me.
Hello. Hey, how's it going?
It is good, and it's a pleasure to meet you. You didn't make it to the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2021.
No, I was unable to make the screening.
You were unable, so I didn't get to meet you. I got to meet your collaborator on the film.
Yeah, Phillip Musumeci.
We
call him Moose. Yeah.
I think he even introduced himself at the Q&A as Moose. So, your film, How to End a Conversation, is just a stunningly good film. It won Outstanding Short Film, Arthouse Experimental, at that festival last November. It's one of my favorites. I mean, I love all the films at the festival, but I do have favorites, and I have experienced loss, so I think it's one of the... And there's a lot of films about loss. So when I say it's one of the better or best films I've seen about loss, like, I actually do expect that to carry. So that is a weighty compliment. So wonderful work.
Thank you. No pun intended, right? With the film.
Absolutely no puns intended on my end. Although it is, and we don't have to talk deep about the film. We're going to talk more about your career because it's such a well-made film. That's what makes me wonder, where you come from.
Sure.
And what your upbringing and interest in film was, because to make a film that thoughtful and deep, like, Moose could have taken that script to people who did not do it justice. And it'll be curious to hear how you two came together on this. I don't know if you've been friends forever or if he shopped around a couple buds he knew who know how to direct, but...
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about it because we haven't known each other that long, but we've worked together on a few things, so I'll get into that.
Oh, wow, so quick collaboration.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so before we jump into your personal history, of course, I got to mention Discover Indie Film. This is the podcast. There was a TV series that was born out of the podcast, and How to End a Conversation is going to be in season 7 of the Discover Indie Film TV series on Amazon Prime Video. So I'm going to tell you this, people. This podcast is going to be released around Christmas, and then on January 15th, your slightly late Christmas present is going to be season 7 of Discover Indie Film, where you're going to get to see How to End a Conversation and see a wonderfully made independent film that is funny, touching, deep, reverent. It's just all the good feels. What can I say?
Can't wait for people to see it. Yeah, really excited.
Right? Yeah. So you find that by going to, did I say it? You find it by going to Prime Video and type in Discover Indie Film. You're free to watch the first 6 seasons, but if you want to see Greg's film, How to End a Conversation, go to season 7, and you could always work backwards. Fair enough. And after you watch it, give it 5 stars, motherfuckers. By the way, we can swear.
Oh, great.
So with that said, I think that's all the setup we need to now find out about your personal history. Where do you come from? When did you first get interested in the art of film and in the tortured life of filmmaking?
Yeah. I mean, I think my story is probably similar to a lot of people's. I grew up in the outskirts of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And, we had like a big swath of woods in our backyard. And so a lot of the times we'd spend, our summers and running around, me and the neighbor kids, like making up stories and coming up with, characters. And that's sort of like the beginning of it, just spending time and telling stories. And ended up... through the years, just getting interested in all these different aspects of filmmaking. At the time, didn't realize that it was kind of culminating in something. Like, I was really interested in writing, and I would write these little short stories, and I'd write, enter little poetry contests as a kid. And then I'd find my way over to like the theater department, and I'd be in the, on the stage, or I would be in the, behind the scenes, like, hanging lights and things. And just
is that like middle school or high school or
earlier? Like middle school. Yeah. And, my mother, at one point had gotten interested in photography and gave me her old, like 35 millimeter camera, which was really cool. So I got to run around and take photos, and actually went to this is really rare. I went to a middle school that had a darkroom. They built an actual operating darkroom. And so I was just fascinated by the photochemical process of watching, a piece of white paper develop in chemicals and an image appear.
Yeah, which you probably got exposed to right before that technology got replaced.
I feel like that's been an ongoing thing throughout my entire career. As soon as I learn a piece of technology, it completely gets replaced. Like I went to film school, spoiler, and was shot on film. And then I think I was the last class to do that. And they moved all to...
Right, the last class to shoot on 16 or something and then cut it physically.
Exactly.
Damn.
Yeah. So I got interested in film and storytelling and just being around all of that. And I was in band. So I liked performing and music and, you know, as these things come together and you know, my dad had the camcorder. So that's a very common story. And I got my hands on it and started running around with it. And you start putting all the pieces together. You're like, oh, this is theater. Oh, this is writing. Oh, this is photography. Oh, this is music. You know, you add some music onto it and you find some, you know, I remember getting access to my school's, now this is high school, like those VHS to VHS editing systems and like piece by piece, you know, putting a story together. And when you do it that way, when you're that slow with it, everything has to be so intentional. And you know, I think learning slowly can actually be a benefit. Another really cool thing is I was very lucky that I got an opportunity to work at a place called Pittsburgh Filmmakers, which at the time was associated with Pitt. And, you know, 2 days out of the school year, you know, a week for, I think, 2 months or something like that, I would go off. Instead of going to classes, I'd go to Pittsburgh Filmmakers and I would learn filmmaking. We'd shoot 8mm. We'd develop it by hand. You know, we would dry it with hair dryers and then we'd cut it with a guillotine and hang it up on a pegboard and splice it together. And that was amazing that, you know, I was still in high school, you know, but then I'd run off and have like almost like a preliminary film education.
For sure. And were there mentors there telling you, like, were they looking over at you and saying, Greg, when you get, you're going to do film studies? You're going to go to film school?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was pretty insufferable there because at that point, you know, now I was all in on film, right? To even apply to this program.
Because it brought together all your interests.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so I was like, you know, I need a crane. And they're like, whoa, slow down there, Scorsese. You know, like, you're not like, let's figure out how to use this camera first. Drones
didn't come quite in time for you.
No.
Can you imagine having access to drones in high school?
I mean, it's incredible.
Everyone forgets that, like, it used to always have to be, here I am jumping on the old tech thing, but cranes and helicopters used to be impossibly expensive to do a high shot.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you were lucky if you could like get a ladder, you know, high enough to, you know,
you put your actors like next to a 4-story building at school just to try to get a nice crane shot.
That's so true.
And now everybody can do it.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I'm all for like the democratization of film equipment. Like the more storytellers we have out there telling different types of stories, the better.
For sure.
So I think it's great.
So you were insufferable because you were so enthusiastic, or because you were like you had big vision?
Both. I was super enthusiastic, and I had done it. You know, the internet was budding, and maybe Wikipedia existed at the time, probably. But we had internet access at school, so I'm just reading everything about film and getting books out of the library. And so I go in with this idea that I'm going to be the next great filmmaker, and the guy's like, whoa, like learn how to compose a shot first, learn how to use this equipment, kind of slow your roll. But they were also really encouraging. I saw my first like experimental films at this place. I didn't know what an experimental film was. I didn't know you could make, who Stan Breckage was, and making scratch films and films with moth's wings glued to them and things like that. And so that was really fascinating, and it opened up my idea that film is not just filming a play or telling a story narratively, linearly, but it's in and of itself its own type of art form, and it can be bent and it can be broken as long as you know the rules. So I thought that was really cool.
It is cool, and it is so, I have to admit, as someone who is a huge fan of the Arthouse experimental. I mean, it's funny, we debated whether to call it avant-garde or Arthouse experimental, and we felt like avant-garde might turn people off. But that's admittedly my favorite category that we have at the festival. But people need the basics before they start getting artsy, because otherwise you can't really accomplish what you want.
Totally. And that's something I talk about a lot when people, ask me about experimental filmmaking. What is an experiment? You're trying to prove something. You're testing something, right? If you're not testing something, you're not trying to prove something. If there's no end game to your experiment, it's not really experimental, right? It might be exploratory, and that's fine too. I think, any type of thing, but the more you have a clear idea of I'm aiming for something, and if I miss, I might end up over here, but I'll discover something new and cool. That's the most exciting stuff to me.
So you were interested in pushing boundaries from the get-go.
I think so, and like not in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to be an experimental filmmaker, I'm going to be an artsy guy. I was like, oh, that's another option. And that kind of always sat in my brain as like, how else can we tell this story? Right. There's one way, there's another way to look at it. Are we looking at it from all the angles? And
I didn't ask, at the concurrent with all this, did you become a cinema fan as far as watching stuff? Was there a VHS or DVD library in your youth?
Yeah. So I don't want to say that I was like a latchkey kid. That's not technically true.
I think it's a good thing, because it teaches independence, but I might be biased because I'm Gen X.
Yeah, no, I think, I definitely had like a lot of those moments after school where no one was around and there was nothing to do but maybe throw on a VHS. And I had, in Pittsburgh, there's a grocery store called Giant Eagle, and we would have a little video card, and the VHS video library rental place was like in the grocery store. And so every time I'd go with my mother, I'd be like, I'm going to go, let me go in there. She'd leave me in there. I'd be there for the 25, 30 minutes while she was shopping. And I'd come back with a stack of films. And there was like the 99 cent or 75 cent or whatever it was. And she's like, yeah, you can get like 4 or 5 of those. So I'd have like a week's worth of films. And these were like, since they were the 75 cent ones, they weren't the new releases. They were I watched, I think, every Abbott and Costello film that exists. I would watch these old black and white films. I hardly knew what was happening in half of them, but I was fascinated by them. And then every once in a while we would do like the family, video night, and we'd get like, Back to the Future, or we'd get Honey, I Shrunk the Kid, all those like great 80s films, and Indiana Jones, and then, so yeah, I devoured that stuff, and being a young cinema fan in the 90s was incredible, because you're at this like precipice where you've got all the, guys from the 70s having huge budgets, right? So you're getting Spielberg and Scorsese and Coppola with these massive budgets, right? And then you've got the, more access to indie filmmaking. You've got the Kevin Smiths and you've got the Jim Jarmusch's. They're coming up.
Spike Lee. Yeah. All of a sudden,
Spike Jonze, all the
Sundance
Spikes
was giving us a name or two a year.
Yeah.
For about a decade, I think.
Yeah. And then
then it stopped, but yeah.
DVDs are out. And so now you've got access to all this stuff. And so I was just devouring it. Yeah.
Right. So you were, and that way you were getting exposed to, because a lot of that, you named Jim Jarmusch. So like that's full on, to me, it was pure entertainment, but it was definitely experimental.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think the indie guys were just, I remember seeing Pi, whatever year that came out, 97 or something. And thinking like, whoa, this guy's doing some different stuff.
I'm going to interrupt and say, I can say it was 1998 because of the woman watching TV in the other room. Our first date, I took her to Pi, a screening of Pi.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so I know that was 98. Silly. But anyway,
no,
that's why she's a good lady. But anyway, yeah, if you saw Pi as a young person.
Yeah, in high school or something.
High school, that's just going to send your brain in the best direction possible, because it just shows you that without money, without a lot of things, you can still make something if the ideas are there.
Absolutely.
Something that totally grabs you.
And those films still come out, which is fantastic, So yeah, that was always in the back of my head. It's what's the idea, right? What's the big idea, and how do you tell that story? And with Aronofsky, with Pi, that was very visceral, right? And then you can have something that's very lackadaisical and kind of just a slice of life, and you're kind of following like Dazed and Confused or something, right? Where you're just kind of following characters. So I don't know. I was sort of agnostic in terms of what I liked. I wasn't like an action guy or like a romantic comedy guy. Anything. I was just eating it up.
Yeah, and you loved, Hollywood fare like Back to the Future, as long as it's well made.
Yeah.
Yeah, so great. So you were just not necessarily a cinephile, but a cinema fan. You really just loved the art form.
Yeah. How do you define how are they different?
I got no idea. Yeah. Well, cinephile to me is like somebody who shuns, like they'll go, right? They kind of shit on the Hollywood stuff, which sometimes I do, but there is good stuff from Hollywood. It's just not as much as there used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if that's an age thing or what.
Yeah, no, I loved it all. And I think, there's a certain point where, your taste and your discretion sort of evolves and you start going, that's not so good. But there's a certain point where when you're young enough, you don't know what's good and what's bad. It's all cinema, right? It's all movies or whatever. And so I'm watching, like the Ninja Turtles movie, which is a fantastic movie, the first, live action Ninja Turtles. And I don't know why I love it so much. And then years later, you're like, oh, because it's dark and gritty and real. And they did all these things that I ended up liking. But then you're, at the same time, I'm watching whatever, something, some animated film that's not very great, but I'm conflating the storytelling. And then I think that it makes you sort of agnostic, right, to what you're consuming. And so you begin to have a wider appreciation of those things.
Which is great. All right, so you have this wonderfully wide appreciation, and that's when you go off to college, or?
Yeah. So I was at this point, I was like, I'm going to film school.
And you're East Coasty in Pittsburgh, so where do you go?
I went to Philadelphia, the big city in Pennsylvania.
Is it considered bigger than Pittsburgh?
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
At least to me,
I'm showing my ignorance. I always hear Pittsburgh's like the San Francisco, and I always hear wonderful things about Pittsburgh, actually.
It's great. You grow up there and you're like, oh, I got to get out of this town. And you go back and you're like, it is gorgeous. It is lovely, And
it's a college town too, right? So
tons of colleges. I look back and I can see just the threads of my life. There's CMU, there's technology, there's robotics, there's engineering, and I'm fascinated by that stuff. And then there's like the Carnegie museums and all the art that was all free growing up. And so, you're kind of in this mixture of like technology and old art and industry and things like that.
Very cool. All right, so you go to Philadelphia, for undergraduate film school.
Yeah, I went to Temple University, and it was great too. They also emphasize like experimental filmmaking. Like there is a narrative program, and a lot of great filmmakers have come out of it. But again, nobody was like, oh, you have to do it the USC way or the UCLA way or the NYU way, which nothing wrong with that. Those are all fantastic. I would have loved to have gone to all of those schools, but Temple was more like, tell your story, find your story, And so
and nicely tucked away from the entertainment centers. Like I always think that the USC, UCLA thing and the NYU, thing, think of the pressure for these kids, like making stuff with Broadway down the street or Hollywood, or a George Lucas building on the campus. Like I'm sure Temple, you had more freedom. There was no pressure. Like your job is to end up in this industry. Like you were learning how to be an artist.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time I was, double majoring in psychology. And I minored in business. I was hedging my bets. And so it was really great that I'd go read books on morals and ethics and the Milgram experiment. And then I'd go and, try to write a script. And then I would go learn business. And none of it was like about the film industry, but those pieces were there. And because you are, to your point, so divorced from it, you're not thinking, how can I make this work for my movie? How can I, you're just kind of experiencing it as a person.
Was it intentional? Because I cannot think of two things to study that are better for the film business, better for a filmmaker than psychology and business. Because every film is a business startup, right? It is a startup. You staff up. You're running a business. Directors and producers are forced to run a business that lasts for about, it could be months, could be a year or two, but it's a business. In psychology, if you don't understand people, you're fucked. And as a writer too, it's great to have psychological insight. So like, you're kind of looking at me. I think it might have been an accident, but that was the perfect plan.
No, it was a complete accident. Like in the same way that I like filmmaking was just this collection of things that I was interested in. I thought, okay, well, if filmmaking falls through, because my parents are like, hey, it's a really hard road. That's an art, you should probably have like a business background. You should probably know just like how to manage money and risk management. And I was like, okay, great. I'll do that to sort of placate them. And then I was thinking to myself, well, if filmmaking doesn't work out, what am I interested in? And science and medicine. And it was always something that was kind of gurgling in the back of my head. So, half the stuff you do for a psych major is like, biology 101 stuff. And so I'm learning about all this. And it's just interesting because it keeps you, I don't know, I think good storytellers, good filmmakers in general, good script writers, have a wide range of things that they're interested in. And then they bring that all together and kind of like use all of that to tell a great story.
I think you're absolutely right, for sure. So Temple was a great experience, it sounds like.
It was a fantastic experience.
And was it and the film part, because you were also a film major.
Yeah.
So yeah, you had a double major with a minor. Wow.
Yeah.
So 3 subjects. Damn. So was it also a mix between film studies and practical like production? Did it favor one or the other?
Yeah, no, it was definitely heavy on theory, which I appreciated. But it was definitely like, boots on the ground. Here's a Bolex, year 1, go out there and start shooting some 8mm stuff or some 16mm stuff. And that was thrilling. You put together a little production, you all work together and you check out the equipment and even just stuff like that. And I still, every once in a while will go out to like a rental house and have to pick up some gear. And it's the same process of, it all starts there. And to your point again about like it being outside and not being LA or New York, we were able to like steal amazing locations, or we were invited to locations where people, you're making a little movie? That's fantastic. You're like, all right, you're going to be in it. You're the guy in the thing. And then I remember we went up on like roofs of buildings and somebody was just like, yeah, it's fine. Just go up there, shoot your thing, Not so in LA or New York. I think you'd have a much harder time. Much harder.
Yeah, boy, there's no limit to the stories I hear about how great it is if you shoot your film in Des Moines. You can just walk down the street and it's bar owner's like, oh, you need a bar? I'd love for you to shoot at my bar. And sometimes they say, well, can we at least watch you shoot the film? We're curious what it's like. Whereas here in LA, I think every bar owner I've ever met is like, oh man, if they're going to try to use, I'm going to try to get 10,000 next time per night.
Yeah. Yeah. People honking at you trying to, as you're trying to unload gear and yeah, no one's really, it's a different vibe for sure, but that was really fun. And then after that freshman year, I knew, okay, I want to just kind of take this and take the energy that I have because I'm meeting people in the theater department and making friends. And so I used my freshman year to write my first feature.
Oh, really? A whole feature?
A whole feature, yeah. So while other people were going out to mixers and, this just kind of shows my nerdy side, I would go, I didn't even own a computer. I went down into the basement of our, dorm where there was like free computers and had floppy disks, and I would write a script and I'd save it and go back, and inch by inch, got this feature together and had it done by the end of the year. And before we went off for summer, I, was hanging around the theater department going, hey, would you like to, what are you doing this summer? You want to make a movie? And I was able to cast.
Oh, so it wasn't going to be like a sophomore year project. You made it what you did on your own time during the summer.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Yeah, you have a drive.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, I convinced my parents to like put up the entire cast. I pulled every single favor, during, the Christmas break or whatever it was before the holiday break, before the end of the year. I went door to door, like a door to door salesman, and, just said, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'm making a film. I'd love to bring you on as a producer. You can start at $5. And,
So you did the fundraising side of it.
Yeah. I mean, before Kickstarter and stuff. And you grow up doing fundraisers for school. You sell wrapping paper, you sell popcorn or whatever it is that you're selling. And so, all these neighbors knew me. And now that so I just would kind of go around and be like, hey, I'm in college now and still asking you for money, but be a part of this movie. And I think we raised, several grand to put this thing together.
Yeah. Cause it was pocket change for them. You weren't saying, here's a $5,000 buy-in.
No, I think there's like 80 producers or something.
Hey, $10 from 80 people. That's real money.
Or whatever it is. Yeah. So
yeah, whatever it was. Yeah. So you shot this thing.
Yeah, you shot it the entire summer.
And did you get to pull equipment from school, or did you rent it in Pittsburgh?
So this is great. One of the lead actors happened to just buy. He was another guy in my film class, and he bought the digital camera, an early, it was the Panasonic AG DVX 100 for those people who know it. The first one where it kind of shot 24p And so we were like, this is amazing. You know, you're cast and can you also bring your camera? And he was like, yeah. And so we used his camera for it. But everything else we like begged, borrowed, stole. You know, we'd use poster board to bounce light, and, you know, whoever could hold a mic, whoever wasn't in the scene was holding a mic, you know, very, very, very
I mean, you
low rent.
were still in college, so I mean, it's fair. It may not have necessarily been a student film for a class, but you were a student of film, so that's how student films should be made, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the accomplishment of that film was, I guess, three things. One, writing a feature screenplay and getting through it, right? I have it and I'm proud of it and I like it and I want to tell that story. Two,
you answered the question I might have asked, which was, how'd you feel about it? So good. You liked it. Good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wish, this is kind of a funny idea, but I wish I could make that film again now, you know, rewrite it. But some of the ideas and themes and concepts and things I was trying to do with no money, I still think were, you know, interesting. And the second big accomplishment was shooting something of that length and telling that whole story. And then the third was finishing it, like actually cutting it together, getting an original score written for it, screening it, you know, in an actual cinema, like actually taking it all the way to the end. And I remember being so proud of it at the time and meeting this guy who was like ancillarily like involved in film production, had been a producer, and, you know, got him to like, you know, sit down and watch it. And it's literally like me and my friend, and we're watching him watch the movie, and the film finishes and he goes, well, you did it. You made a movie, you know, like, and that was like the kindest thing he could have said, you know, about it.
Because it was right.
Yeah, I mean, it's cardboard and spit and, you know, Band-Aids holding the whole thing together. And
probably, I would probably enjoy it more than a lot of shit I see. But wonderful. So, and you got it all done in that one summer?
We shot it that summer and then went back and you know.
Right, so post bled through sophomore year?
Yeah, you know, used all of sophomore year to like basically learn how to edit, you know, not properly, but something of that length that really tests the limits of what you know in like Final Cut.
I was going to say, yes, so you got offline editing. So you got, Final Cut had come out on Macs. Mm-hmm. So I know Windows Movie Maker and iMovie got a lot of people started on editing. But Final Cut Pro, there you go. Final Cut, yeah, excellent.
You know, and then I went over to the music department and put up flyers and said, hey, do you want to audition to write a score? And met a guy that I still work with to this day, moved out to LA, and I have him score commercials that are, you know, national commercials. So like, it's kind of cool. And yeah, I just think like and I didn't realize at the time, I'm like, I'm not a producer. You know, I'm a writer director. And it's like, no, that's producing. You went out and you've put the thing together and you raised the money. And it took years of denying that, you know, I need to find a good producer. I need someone to be my producer. I need a producer who believes in me. And then realizing like, you can just do it if you do it.
You can. I think everyone dreams about having the, oh my God, I had his name in my head. Scott Moser?
Yeah.
Kevin Smith and Scott Moser. Like Kevin can just go, Scott, take care of all that shit. And he does.
Yeah.
But yeah, not everyone has that. Even Tarantino had Bender, right? He had Lawrence Bender for the first bunch. Like someone to watch your six and take care of all that stuff and be the producer. But yeah, if you do it for yourself, you know, Spike Lee did, all those other heroes do.
Yeah. And again, I was like denying like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I shouldn't have to do that. I want to focus on the storytelling. And then years later, you realize that having the ability to do it allows you to, and I don't mean this in like a control freak way, but it allows you to control certain aspects. And the more control that you retain, even if you're working way harder, you're able to craft a vision that's maybe more in line with what you wanted. You're giving less decisions away.
100%. I totally get what you're saying. All right, so that went well. You were proud of that. Were you also making shorts for school?
Yeah. So at that point, now we're, you know, shooting a lot more like black and white Bolex stuff, 16 millimeter, and then moving on to like, I think it was maybe an Arri camera. I can't remember, but you know, something a little bit more advanced. And then by senior year, we were shooting like color negative, which was really fantastic. And I shot my senior thesis film. All in color negative, and my editor graduated early, who was also my roommate, and you know, we've been friends for years. And he, 6 months or whatever, half a semester early, moved to LA. And I'm like, man, you're supposed to edit this film. What are you doing? Like, like I'm not going to edit this thing. And he's like, well, let's try this. Like, why don't we like ship me some hard drives, dupe it down, ship me some hard drives. And, we telecined it at NFL Films in New Jersey. And I will send you, if you keep your drive exactly the same as my drive, I'll just send you the project file for Final Cut, and you can just open up the project file and it should reconnect everything. I was like, oh, you can do that? And he goes, yeah. And so probably before a lot of people were doing remote, cross country.
Yeah. He recreated the cloud concept.
Essentially. And so, he'd send me a project file and I'd reopen it and, half the things would be broken because he had added, and then he'd have to whatever. But we made it work, and he ended up editing the entire film remotely from Los Angeles, got it done in time for me to submit it and, graduate. So that was great.
Yeah. Cause that was back in the days when you had to put out an EDL, right? And then cut the negative.
Yeah.
You actually had to cut your negative, or did you cut an answer print?
I don't think we cut the negative because we telecined it right
away. Telecined and kept it on video.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I guess you only have to cut negative. But that was a crazy time back when Avid's only purpose was to put out an EDL that then a negative cutter would go in and cut the negative to this list of numbers on a piece of paper. Like,
it's wild.
Those days are long gone.
Yeah, and we never printed it back to film, so we didn't have to worry about.
Fair enough. Yeah,
anything like that. But yeah, so after that, since my buddy was already out here in Los Angeles, he said, come on out, give it a try. And I at the time was running a not running, but I was the RA for a internship program through my school. So over the summer you could come out, try to find an internship, maybe get a job, make some contacts, meet some people. And I had gone the summer between my junior and senior year, had a great time. And then I said, okay, well, I want to apply to be the RA and kind of run it, and ended up doing that and getting hired.
And that was here?
In LA. Yeah.
In LA. Right. It's fascinating. This is, I'm going to confess, and this doesn't help everyone listening, but as an LA native, I didn't realize how many universities have some satellite thing going on in LA, because I know Syracuse does. Now you just told me that Temple does.
Yeah, I think Emerson had one.
Yeah, so all these schools actually do these wonderful things where there's students who have interests that they actually sort of need to be in LA and can come out here for a summer and actually make some worthwhile contacts.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting because A, Los Angeles was nothing like I expected. B, you're a PA or something, but you're working on real things that people see, and it's fascinating how that kind of also turns your brain a little bit, because you're like, oh, I could stay in Philly, or I could go somewhere else and make my little movies and keep doing that, which there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think a lot of great films come out of those types of situations. But if you're interested in the industry, being able to get in there early and just kind of look around and kick the tires is kind of great.
How nuts was it? So you got to PA and stuff. Was it nuts to PA on a commercial or a TV show or something and see what that crew and that production was like compared to the school stuff?
Yeah. It's because, I would watch every behind the scenes DVD bonus feature I could, but it's not until you're actually on the set and some gaffer is screaming at you to get off his, get away from his equipment that you're like, oh my God, this is real. I had some really wild experiences. I got really lucky. And that guy that saw the movie and said, hey, you made a movie, happened to be putting a crew together in Los Angeles when I was out here. And he said, hey, we got this job for MTV. We're going to be shooting a documentary about this band Fall Out Boy. And we're going to be basically following around their tour bus. Do you want to do that? And I was like, yes, I do. And so being able to be with a professional crew, but very small, and have that independent spirit, and be traveling and, trying to source gear in different places. And I did 13 different jobs, and, that was a really powerful experience that kind of connected the dots and said, yes, you can do something on a professional level for MTV, and it's not that different than film school. But the gap between what is and isn't film school is massive, in terms of professionalism and knowledge and, that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. The MTV thing is so cool.
Yeah.
I've always actually, in spite of, I really can't tell you. I know there's a lot of Teen Mom kind of shit on there now, but for most of my life, MTV was kind of cutting edge. It was legitimately cutting edge, and there was, whether it was documentary or an animation with liquid television. One of the best shows I've seen in my life is called Buzz, and it was made by purely experimental filmmakers out of New York, and it was this amazingly edited art film every half hour a week. They just did amazing shit. And only MTV were the only people who would touch something like that.
It was so cool. They would, even the weird interstitials that would be claymation or some, like, you're like, what is, it's all little cinema, it's so cool. Yeah, you're totally, and those music videos had massive budgets. I remember seeing like the Tonight Tonight music video for the Smashing Pumpkins that kind of references like, a Voyage to the Moon. And just, it's gorgeous. And,
it truly was cinema.
Yeah.
Back in the glory days. And I get, you know what? It still is in a lot of ways. It's just the budgets are different, but they're still hiring really great people sometimes to make really great music videos. And then there's just shit where people stand on stage and play. But hey, what are you going to do? It's always been that way.
Or it's kind of returned to its like very beginning roots where the budgets are so small and it's, a crew of 3 or 4 people, but they've got a really cool idea and they've come up like with some new little trick in After Effects and make something that ends up, in a Marvel movie 6 years later because somebody saw it, I think that's really cool.
Very cool. All right, so the MTV thing was during a summer, or was it right after college?
It was during a summer during college. It was, I don't know if it was between junior and senior year or right after senior year, but it was somewhere in that world during that program. Right. Yeah.
So, and it was certainly an experience when you were out here. That was enough. It was not a big step for you to move to LA after you graduated?
No, not a big step at all. In fact, it was a little stressful because I was dating somebody at the time, and I got this job offer. A friend of mine was hired at a reality television production company, and he said, "Hey, we need somebody. Can you do it?" I interviewed. They're like, "Great, you got the job. When can you start?" And I'm like, "I have to go back to Philadelphia,
go finish college."
Yeah, and like put my stuff in a car and like get out here. And so I told my girlfriend at the time, I was like, "Hey, this is insane, but would you like to just move to LA with me?" And she said yes, and now she's my wife. So it worked out. Yeah.
I just gave him 2 thumbs up because that's lovely. I was hoping you didn't say you had to break up, but
yeah, no, she was like, great. We threw everything in her like exhausted Toyota.
Did you graduate and then load up the car the next day?
Oh, essentially. Yeah. We drove from her place in Philly to my place in Pittsburgh, picked up some stuff for me, and then just like drove straight. And I would sleep and she would drive, and then I would drive and she would sleep. And we got out here and I started, being a PA on a reality television show.
Very cool. You want to say which one, or it doesn't matter?
No, it's fine. It was a show called Little People, Big World. I think it was on TLC. I don't know if you...
I remember something like that. I remember it was kind of a thing for a while.
Yeah. So that was interesting. And that company had been doing a bunch of different, I didn't realize that you would shoot bunch of pilots, and so they would do like 1 or 2 episodes of shows that never got made, but I had worked on maybe 5 or 6 shows that never went anywhere.
I'm sure very few people who aren't around it know just how many pilots there were made, literally shot super professionally, especially TV sitcoms. Every year there was like 100 sitcom pilots, and like 5 would get picked up. The failure rate was so high, but they put so much money into those pilots because at least they were admitting that they didn't know if it was good or not till they saw it.
Yeah, I wish there was like a pilot graveyard website you could go and just watch, all the old pilots.
Me too, because God, how come Netflix doesn't grab all that shit? Because I know for a fact that there was a Robert Smigel, Conan O'Brien pilot starring Adam West, Batman, that they wrote for Adam West. And I think I heard Adam West in an interview say, like, it was the funniest thing he'd ever done. It was the best, and it didn't get picked up. So no one's ever seen it.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, right? All right, so you make it out here. You hit the ground running.
went from, reality television, and that job just sort of naturally ended. They were like, okay, the show's done. And I ended up getting an offer to work in animation in Burbank. And I was like, okay, let's try that. And I'd always been a fan of animation. I grew up watching animation. My first movies were stop motion animation, right, with action figures.
Excellent. You didn't mention the action figures, but that's rad. That's very cool. I know so many people started with that.
Yeah, I think I had a little little R2-D2.
And you would just hit your finger on the record button as quickly as you could.
Exactly. And
then you were doing in-camera editing.
That's exactly right. And so I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm in this world of animation. And that job led to, it was a small animation company in Burbank. That led to a job at DreamWorks.
That doesn't suck.
No.
That sounds pretty good.
No, that was fantastic because now I'm working, it was at the very beginning of their television department. So again, like this whole idea of like old technology and new technology, they were like, how can we build a CG pipeline that works with really high quality? Because at the time it was like Jimmy Neutron, but they wanted something, it was for How to Train Your Dragon. So they wanted it to be really high quality. And so I was there at the very beginning, actually at the white U.S. Bank building on Van Nuys Boulevard. That's where like the Splinter Cell was. And then we would go and have meetings at the campus. And it was amazing when we would go over there and get the free lunch and stuff. But that's how I started doing a bunch of animation. And that, again, it just expands your palette. You're like, oh, now that I know how to do a CG pipeline, that's not so different than a VFX pipeline. And you're meeting storyboard artists and you're meeting, you're going to voice records and you're learning how to run a voice record session. And so all that stuff was like really, really useful.
And you're getting these really great jobs and really great learning opportunities and just great opportunities in general. Is it taking up all your time? Are you like doing fun little things? Are you still writing on the side? Are you still doing your own thing? Or for a little while were you just kind of focused on the work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'll start by saying like, I definitely got burnt out because what I was doing was both. But had I not been doing both, I don't know if I would have gotten to where I got. So like, there's definitely a balance. And at the time, my wife went off to med school. And so I was kind of solo. And so I just threw myself into work. And we were working with animation studios all over the world to complete shots because we just couldn't do we didn't have the capacity. So we'd be having meetings with people who are ending their day in Bangalore or Shanghai at 6 a.m. and then we work all day. And as we were finishing our day at 8, 9 o'clock at night, they would be starting. And so I'd be doing meetings. I'd be logging in remotely, but during all of that, I was still trying to make short films. So I made a couple short films, and one of them happened to win a film festival. And this film, it's kind of tonal. It's about Los Angeles. It's very heartfelt. And there's a theme there, I guess, in my work. But I go back to DreamWorks, and everyone, how was your weekend? Well, I got up to this, I got up to that. Greg, what'd you do? And I go, actually, I won a film festival. And they're like, you make films? Yeah. I thought I talked about it all the time. No, can we see it? Yeah. So we go down to the screening room, and we're at the screening room at DreamWorks, and I'm playing my little short film, and half the people get up and, when it's over, walk out. The other half, hey, congratulations. That was great. Good job, buddy. And then a couple people lingered, and they said, yeah, that was really great. I would love to know, talk to you a little bit more. And one of those people actually became a really close friend and mentor of mine and gave me a lot of opportunities down the road and started my career in commercial advertising and, commercial filmmaking.
Right. As a director? Or?
Yeah. So like we would do, he was in the art department, and he'd be, doing all these sketches and stuff. And he said, I've got a friend who wants to go shoot a commercial for like the local newspaper. And would you like to come on and, help shoot it, and you can help edit it, and we'll code, I'll direct one, or you can take, whatever. And so we would just work together on these like sort of ancillary projects.
So he knew there was this fairly young person who he had seen your work and knew, okay, this guy's competent. He's got the energy to do this while working full time. Yeah, that's a good find, I think, for someone to find someone like yourself who's got the goods. And that youthful energy to just burn the candle at both ends and survive it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was mutually beneficial, like I got to learn from him and meet some people in his sphere of influence. And that was really cool, and hear his stories about working in Hollywood. And I was more than happy to contribute what I could. So, that was great. And then that's sort of how I got left totally burnt out, from just exhaustion. At this point I'm in my, early 20s and I'm already exhausted. And, I was I like animation, but I always called it directing or making a movie from space, because you make all these notes, you make all these ideas, you have all these ideas, you send them off, and then 24 hours later you get...
And people in the third world then get to work.
Yeah. Or, the artists at the other, Redwood City or whatever, whatever it was, they would come back, and then you would look at it and go, that's not exactly what I asked for, and make notes and send it back. And I loved the immediacy of working on a set. And so I was thinking, how can I get the most experience as fast as possible with the most different crews, different types of cameras, different lenses. And I was like, if I go into independent cinema, feature filmmaking, it's going to take me 3 years to make one thing. And so I was like, advertising. Because at this point, music videos are kind of starting to dip, but advertising is taking off, and social media is beginning to become a real thing, and people are looking for short form digital content, branded content. And so I threw myself into advertising, and that's exactly what happened. I met tons of DPs, I met tons of PAs, tons of crew, and I'm producing and I'm directing and I'm working on different types of things. I'm shooting a cooking show and learning how to do that and do food styling. And then the next day I'm shooting, something completely different. So that was kind of almost like going to the production gym, working out.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And what was your road into that? You had met enough people at DreamWorks that you could transition over? Or did you sort of start from scratch again? Yeah,
so DreamWorks, it started from scratch. DreamWorks ended, and I happened to, again, know somebody from film school, and he was working at this company, and he said, hey, I know you need a job. They need somebody to come in, and I don't think it was to run productions or to direct. I think I was organizing files or something really basic. But there was small production company, so they had a little soundstage, very small soundstage, and they were shooting this a cooking show thing. And at one point, they needed somebody to step in and help produce one, and then they needed someone to step in and help direct one, and
it is one of the most important things someone could learn is how important it is to be willing to take that lowest rung job at a company that does something moderately interesting. Because, yeah, I've known a lot of young people who are like, I don't want to be doing that, because once you're known as the gopher, they'll never see you as the director. And I think you prove that wrong.
Well, I was always in my mind the director, because I would go home, and hey, can I borrow this camera? Hey, can I borrow this light panel? Can I, hey, whatever it is. And I would go home and continue to make little films and continue to do those things, or shoot music videos for my friends who had bands, or whatever it is I could do. I never stopped doing my own thing, even though, yeah, of course I did less. And of course they were small projects, and I wish I had more feature films under my belt. But that kept me thinking of myself as a writer and a director. And so whatever I did for my day job, as long as I was close to the flame and learning something and meeting interesting people, then I was happy to do it.
For sure. And that kind of positive attitude surely helped. Not just you getting through life, but I'm sure people appreciated it.
I think so. I try to work hard, be nice, stay positive. Things, my wife went to med school, and she's a doctor now, and that gives me so much perspective when I have a really bad day on set, or, I'm trying to balance a budget. And then she's like, yeah, I'm dealing with this patient who's going through this thing. And I'm like, wow, yeah, we're telling stories, and why are we doing it? And it's just going back and reconnecting with that original thing, which is, if you're fascinated by all of it and you enjoy all of it, I always say, find the fun. Where's the fun part of this? Yes, making a budget is not fun, but we're talking, what are we using this money for? What, however you can find the fun.
Yeah, no, it's the day. Well, yeah, trudging through the budget may not be fun, but the whole time you're doing it, you can visualize what it's going to lead to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you call some, you have an excuse now to call some random producer from an indie film that you remember their name from the credits by, and you go, hey, you have no idea who I am, but would you mind telling me how to write a budget for this? And this is what I think is right. And, call number 17, the person might go, hey, yeah, come by for coffee and I'll talk to you for 20 minutes and give you some pointers.
Funny tangent. Someday I'm going to try to have a dinner party and I'll invite you and your wife and the other two filmmakers I've met through this podcast whose wives are doctors and went through medical school that's got to be, I'll just be quiet because I didn't marry a doctor, so no one would care about me. But what an interesting coincidence that filmmakers and doctors coming together. I don't know. There's got to be something to that.
I think so. I think
maybe they appreciate having the creativity in their lives since they deal with actual life and death shit.
Yeah. Well, with my wife, she was a dance major as well. So she was a double major. And so she has this artistic side that is always part of her. And she's fascinated, and her professional side is science. And, I was saying earlier, I'm a creative guy, but I always loved the science and technology and the human body. And so that kind of overlap. But I think to answer your question, I would guess that it has to do with empathy. If you are a doctor, you have this ability to connect with people and empathize with their pain, their suffering. You understand what they're going through, and you're also a little bit of a detective, right? You're trying to figure something out, and you have to listen to their story. Tell me your story. How do you live? What do you eat? What do you do? And I think that filmmakers and storytellers also are highly empathetic people that are trying to, put a mystery out that brings, a person along on that ride to, experience a narrative.
I think you just improvised an excellent answer. I believe it. I believe it wholeheartedly.
That's my guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about your own relationship. You should have some insights to it, I hope.
Yeah.
All right. So you get your foot in at this production company, and then that leads to you actually eventually the cooking show, and then you start to get producing and directing on commercials?
Sort of. So again, because it's really hard to get hired as a director. Let's just say that. Being a professional director is a rarefied air. And even professional directors who do it full time don't work all the time because you have to bid on jobs, and it's a whole thing. And so I never was I'm only going to focus on directing because I want to have the opportunity to continue to grow and live and, all that. So I became a producer a creative producer at an agency. And again, had amazing experiences there.
At an ad agency?
At an ad agency, yeah. So I got to work on, all these crazy shoots as a producer. And every once in a while, hey, Greg, grab the camera. So it's not like I was being hired to direct. But at the same time that I was doing those things, I would say yes to an independent non-union commercial. Hey, can you, I see you just worked on a thing over here. Can you go and direct this Acura commercial? So that was really cool. So it was interesting because one day I'm on, a 3-day Acura shoot and shooting cars and people, and I'm the guy. And then the next day, I'm going in and they're going, hey, your timesheet was wrong. Can you please fix that? And we have this issue with the client, and so it's very humbling, and it keeps you really focused on the work and less about your ego, for sure.
Fascinating. All right. So that, and you were doing writing the whole time too? Writing now and then?
Yeah, never stopped writing, but I'm a very slow writer and I'm not a consistent writer. I don't have a good practice. I'll be the first to admit it. But when I finally get my teeth into something, I'm always writing ideas. I'm always putting down little observations. I'm always collecting little mood boards and, Pinterest this or going to museums and taking photos, right? So it's all sort of swirling. And then when, how a little particulate is what a cloud will form around that. You need that one thing that everything can glom onto. Something like that will happen. And I'll be like, okay, that's the thing. And then I'll go ahead and write. And then during the pandemic, I wrote 5 scripts and, cause I finally had time and nothing else to do, but writing has always been part of my practice. But, I'm not as consistently as I would like.
It would probably kill you. You'd probably have to develop a speed habit to stay up enough hours to writing takes a lot of hours.
It really does. Yeah. And I read a lot. And so I try to have that muscle of, reading stories. And so that I have that language and I have that vocabulary so that when I do sit down to write, I've got something.
Cool. So you have this busy and promising career. Congratulations on getting that. Not everyone does. Lord knows. Nothing against the people who bartend while they write scripts, but good for you. You're doing the ads and you're doing things.
Yeah.
So, do you keep getting to make short films? How do you end up? How does How to End a Conversation come into your life?
So there was a certain point where I'm doing all these ads and I'm making, music videos, but I'm not telling the stories. And yeah, you're telling, they're almost like jokes, right? Setup and punchline, but I'm not really doing narrative. And I go, why did I move out here? How did I end up here? And I realized I should go back and just start writing some shorts and, put together a few that didn't go anywhere, just wrote them. I ended up meeting somebody at one of these ad agencies, named Jerry Spears. And Jerry, was like, I've got an idea for a short and I'm in producer brain mode. And he's like, I just directed a feature and I'm burnt out on directing. Would you want to come on and take over the job as directing? You can help me kind of work the script a little bit. And, my girlfriend will be the lead actress and, her scene partner at Scene Study, will be the main actor. And his name is Phillip Musumeci. And it was like exactly what I needed. It's like the universe was like, you've been wanting to get back into narrative, you've kind of dipped your toe. And so finally I was like, yes, let's do this. And I just kind of pulled the ripcord and like, we can do it in one day. And this is what we're going to do. And, submitted it to a bunch of festivals and it got, in and started doing that whole thing. And it just wasn't really a part of what I did. I was in film, I was in advertising. I wasn't going to film festivals. And like that first run of going to all these different fests of different sizes, meeting the programmers, seeing all these amazing short films, meeting the filmmakers, seeing the passion and the love and the audience and the people that show up. And, from small to large, it was so amazing. I was like, this is what I want to be a part of. I can't wait to do my next one. And Phil goes, well, I have an idea for a script. I wrote something. And I said, well, let's send it over. And that's how we got started on that.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'm going to jump back a minute and a half and say, the person who said to you, I normally direct him, I want someone else to do this for me. What are the odds of meeting that person? My God, most people hold on to things. They put a chokehold to the death on, I don't want anyone to direct this but me. So what a wonderful person to realize, hey, I should hand this off.
Yeah. And I think him and I kind of connected because we're so similar in that I can just be the writer, and I can give my scripts to somebody else and say, go forth, take it, make it your own. I can just be the director and take on somebody else's thing or collaborate. I think I have a couple co-directing credits to my name because I don't need that. And remember I told you my ego got destroyed when you're going from being the director to then being the grunt. And so it's like, how do we make the thing? And can I contribute in a meaningful way in this position? If not, I'll step back. If I can, let me add it. And he was so similar where, he wrote the script for that feature that he did. He co-directed it. And he also edits. So he edited the short that he and I wrote together that I directed, and so it's like, how do we get it made?
Yeah. It's funny. It's difficult to end up boasting about one's lack of ego. But I once got burned on a set because like someone was saying to me how nice it was to work with me. And I said, yeah, it's because I don't have a big ego. And then they looked at me like, well, that was egotistical.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't win here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to have a healthy ego to be a leader and to have a compelling take on something. But I think you have to be a collaborator and you have to understand that, like I was saying, you can contribute in different ways.
Well, and a healthy ego allows you to listen to others and allows you to let others do their work. Whereas if you have an unhealthily large ego, that's when you're like, you shit on other good ideas because if it's not your idea, it can't be good.
Yeah, when you talk to Phil, he might have a different opinion of me, but I feel like I try to be a good collaborator.
I don't think he had anything bad to say about you at the Q&A at the festival.
Oh, great. Okay.
Of course, there was an audience there, so he had to watch himself.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm sure he's super proud of it.
Yeah, he should be. I mean, he brought this story to me. He told, and we don't have to get into the whole story about it, but it was a rare opportunity for me to really kind of say, hey, I'm not going to write this for you, but here's what I would do. And if you want me to be a part of this and be the director, it has to be something that I connect with. And for me to connect with it, here's some ideas and here's some changes and here's what I think you should do. And he would push back and we would go this way and we would go that way. And, I think the end product is, it's the screenplay that he wrote, but it was in collaboration with me as the person who he knew would be making it. So that was a really cool process.
That's a great process. And it shows, I mean, not like I have watched the behind the scenes and know what levels it went through, but the finished product is so well balanced. And the story, cool enough where people have to wait to see it. So I won't give anything away, but there are transitions in the story that happen in a really wonderful way, and things are revealed. Like depths are not many short films come to the festival circuit where like it starts off feeling like this kind of film, and then the tone changes as more of the story is revealed, and the director is adjusting their direction as these changes are happening. Like it's just a really well done work. So
thank you. And credit goes to the editor as well, and the actors. You come with a script and somebody has a different take on a line and you change it and it changes the meaning of the scene and it's better, and so it's just like, how do we get to the best product? And it's not by being precious, but being intentional about what we're all making. For sure. Yeah. So, and it sounds like it really does reflect your perspective and your taste. I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I like you said at the beginning, I thought it was really kind where you were like, yeah, it's like, it's funny, but it's also sad and it's also sweet and it's also thoughtful, and that to me, those are the, I love films like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind where, very sad, but also jubilant moments of sweetness. And there's also some weird technology and it's a little bizarre, and so things like that were always, big influences on me. For sure. For sure. And then it's visually very compelling. You have, I suppose, what makes it Arthouse experimental to you might be. See, now I'm going to use a term that can be misinterpreted, but I trust you to get what I mean by it's like there's a gag. There's a gag in the film. Definitely, yeah. That and not a gag as in a joke. A gag as in a visual cue. Yeah. That changes meaning throughout the film. Exactly. And how often does that happen? My God, I'm not sure I can name one. Well, that's what was interesting is like that idea that you're talking about was not in the original script. That's something I brought to him. Exactly. So I'm pulling faces for Greg now because I don't think there is a film without that. Right. Without that visual representation of something internal. And when Phil finally was like, I get what you're going for, then we did a version of it where that's in there. And then we said, well, how do we make that a character and how do we make that evolve? So I'm really happy to hear that you got that, and I hope other people did too. Yeah. Oh yeah, I think it's universal. Yeah, I think it's. Boy, someone would have to be really dense. No, people dig it. Yeah. And honestly, it really does also play off Phil's performance and personality, because at first we think he's one kind of guy, and then, oh my God, the depth of his character that's revealed it's such a, your opinion of that character does a complete 180. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully it changes 3 times. We kind of wanted to present him as an asshole and then kind of make him a little pathetic and then a little relatable, so, and hopefully that journey happens. Yeah. And I think I remember from the Q&A, there's voiceover, and the voiceover wasn't written like it was in post that someone realized, someone said, let's try some voiceover. And I looked at him at the Q&A and I was like, that voiceover seems like it was there from the very beginning. And that's the hope, right? Each step of the way. So Jerry, the guy I was telling you about who edited this picture, he wrote most of that voiceover. and he recorded it in his voice. You know, we knew we needed it and we would workshop it, but then he went off and did that. And then Phil came in and did his performance of it. And, you know, when you're cooking, right, you taste the food and you go, it needs more salt, needs more pepper. Ooh, we burnt that. Let's throw it out. And ultimately, like, it should feel like a cohesive dish at the end. And the film's not done till it's done. And so, like, I would say to anybody, and I'm sure a lot of filmmakers have had this experience, but, you know, keep working it. You know, don't let that stop you from shooting. And if it's not perfect, you can reshoot, you can change, you can pivot, you can, you know, whatever.
Yeah. And yeah, voiceover, talk about a smart way to expand the story, expand what the experience for the audience without going back and shooting more.
And we also didn't want to add time. I was like, for me, like a perfect short film, and of course, I'm going to eat my words, I'm sure at some point, is like 7 minutes.
I'm now throwing my hands in the air because I don't know what COVID did to the world of filmmakers, but we have gone from like averaging 7 to 12 minute shorts. It feels like they're 15 to 25 now.
Yeah. And some stories can sustain that, but I always say to somebody who gives me a 5-page script, I go, this is an episode of television, right? Is your story, you know, usually there's an A plot and a B plot and there's a, you know, like, can we really sustain this? Or is there a better way? Again, going back to that, like, how do we cook this down and make it, you know, a nice reduction and get it to like the core of what it is. And to me, like 7 minutes is long enough that you can tell a complete story, but it's short enough that the audience isn't kind of like pulling away and getting bored and disengaging.
100%. And I love some shorts that are in the 20
Absolutely.
plus range.
Yeah.
I got exasperated with it because it takes our selection jury so much longer to watch these longer films that we actually created the term featurette for last year's Sherman Oaks Film Festival. We started it for Filmvasion LA this last June. Your festival in 2021, November 2021, we didn't have it yet, and it was just like, I think it was a half hour, like under 30 minutes. No, it was 45 minutes. 45 and under was a short, and 45 and over was a feature. And I was like, this just doesn't work because you can't compare a 38-minute short with a 7-minute short. So we created featurette. So now every category, right, Arthouse, drama, comedy, has 20 under is a short, 20 to 60 is a featurette, and 60 plus is a feature.
That's so smart. It's like a pamphlet, a novella, a novel, an epic, you know?
Yeah, because
different sizes.
It's really not fair. Also, it's not fair to the person who makes a wonderful 37-minute film to say you're going to compete for awards with a tight, wonderful 7-minute film. I mean, that's a lot to ask for a jury to like,
yeah,
not just prefer. But you're a smart filmmaker in that you know that people. Time is money. Time is a big ask.
Yeah, yeah. And I started, you know, I realized myself when I started to disengage, and I go, okay, we can tighten that, you know. And so trying to always be your own audience to a degree, I think helps.
Yeah. All right. So this film really sounds like it was a great experience and collaboration from everyone involved.
Yeah.
So have there been more projects like that since then, and was this made during COVID?
This was made during COVID. So, when we shot it, you know, we used the COVID protocols. You know, everybody was masked and vaccinated. We had the lead actress in it had to drop out at the last minute because of COVID, and so we had to recast her like days before, which is amazing that we found who we found, and you know, Olga Desiatnik, and she was great. But it was a challenge to do a film that didn't feel like a COVID movie, if you know what I mean by that.
Of course I know. I was about to there's a lot of wonderful films that have masks in them, but the fact that yours has none gives it life going. It doesn't make it a period piece, it's not a snapshot of life during COVID. It's a film.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good choice.
Thank you. Yeah. And you know, the themes of loss and love and things, you know, that was like in the air. But we maximized, I think we had like 2 locations. We had like an outdoor location, and then we had one indoor location that we redressed several different rooms within that location to be different places. And so really just like it goes back to economy of filmmaking, which is, do you need to see the whole apartment, or do you just need to see a guy on a couch who falls asleep half drunk, right? What's actually in the frame here? And with lighting and a little bit of set design, people will go, oh, that must be his apartment, you know?
Yeah. And they won't know it's the same space that was used for a psychiatrist's office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, just trying to be really, really smart, mitigate contact and time people are, around each other and being super, super safe. But for that reason, I'm proud of it, that we were able to do it during COVID. For
sure. And then you have a great festival run, I assume.
Yeah, we had a really nice festival run. And since then, I wrote some of those things that I wrote during the pandemic. I brought out and I wanted to go back to staying in that narrative vein. And so I submitted some of the screenplays around and ended up winning a film festival, best screenplay, which came with some grant money and some support from the local community. And so that'll be the next thing that we're shooting in December.
Oh, fantastic.
December, January, yeah.
And the How Do You End a Conversation team, was it so copacetic? Are you going to try to work together again?
No, we had a huge falling out. We all hate each other. No, they're great.
Figures.
No, I try to run a really nice set and I try to work with really nice people. And so anybody from that crew that I can invite back, Olga's already saying, hey, I don't have to be in it. I just want to be on the set. Paul Michael, who was the guy in the vest in the elevator, who was also my AD on that. He's like, I'm going to come down and help and do whatever you need. So it's really nice. Again, like you just collect amazing people and, like attracts like. And so luckily I've been on enough sets where I have this like fantastic pool of like collaborators and people I can work with.
Yeah. And it's, what can I say? I'd like to see more of it. So thumbs up.
Thank you.
Excellent. Anything else you want to mention? I know you're shooting something actually right around the time this podcast is going to get released. You might be done shooting.
Yeah.
I assume you're not going to shoot during Christmas.
It's either we don't have the dates, but maybe right after, before, things start really picking back up, but somewhere in that pocket. But we're trying to do 2 at the same time, back to back.
Oh yeah.
And they're both a little bit different. They're, there's some political undertones, which is not something I really tackle, but I have a take on something and I feel like, okay, I can try that. And then I'm finally back to where I was in the basement of the dorm and putting together some feature scripts. And I feel like I'm finally at the point where I can make a run of it and try to get, something a little bit longer off the ground. And
just, I hope this isn't annoying, but during COVID, did you think about grabbing that first feature script and doing your little dream with it, which is giving it like a rewrite from today's perspective? And then I guess you didn't, but
no,
because you had too much other stuff to do. I mean, you definitely sound like you were productive during COVID. I actually hit a point halfway through lockdown where I was like, I can't do shit anymore. Like I did the festivals and I could do a little more because I started to get down.
Yeah. I went through that period and I think I pulled myself out of it by getting, into other things, I started a coffee roasting company. I love coffee. And so I started writing little short stories on the back of coffee bags and roasting coffee and giving them to friends. And then eventually people started buying them. And then I bought a giant roaster. And then I went up and down the coast of California touring coffee farms and learning about the, different aspects of growing and cultivating coffee.
No, I mean, I'm resisting the urge to ask you a ton of coffee questions now because I start every morning with black coffee. I don't sweeten or I don't use anything else. God bless my now in his 20s nephew who got me started. He's like told me about a coffee press. I finally got a press instead of using
Well, you're hearing it on the podcast, so I have to stay true to my word. I'm going to bring you some coffee. And
The funny thing is, my best friend I grew up with is coming down from Vancouver in 2 days, and he's like, he grinds his own beans. I'm lazy. I buy ground. I'm like, doesn't that make a mess? I don't want to clean a mess.
Yeah.
He's like, it's worth it.
I do it every morning, grind my own beans.
Every morning. See, it's a ritual too, right?
Definitely. I say it's the first creative act of your day. you're making something.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. We could talk about coffee for too long. I'll back off. All right. Website, social media, anything people should check out?
So just it's my first and last name, Gregory Kasunich .com. So GregoryKasunich.com. And then my Instagram handle has my middle initials JM. So it's at Gregory JM Kasunich.
And I will put links to those in the show notes because, the spelling of your last name might get some people. They might have to keep backing up if they're trying to write it down.
Oh, my goodness. I know.
So
I need a name like Mick
notes.
G or something, right?
I totally just, as someone whose name is, I have 3 first names and none of them are complicated at all. Like, I couldn't get, I love that you got your name.com.
That's true.
I'm pretty jealous of you.
Yeah, but all my stuff's on there. You can see commercials and music videos and shorts and photography and things like that. So check it out.
Very cool. Very, very cool. All right, I will wrap us up then. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I forget the speech other podcasters do, but like and subscribe, follow, review, whatever you want to do. Say nice things about this podcast on whatever podcatcher or podcast player you're using. Go to Greg's work anywhere you can find it and give it thumbs up. Put positive comments. Go to his website and then follow links to videos and say that's go on Vimeo and put good comments. I've been told by other filmmakers that the comments mean more than the likes. And don't be snarky. This is a be kind because there's too many trolls in this world. All right, so if you want to see the film How to End a Conversation, go to Amazon Prime Video. Type in Discover Indie Film. Go to Season 7, which releases on January 15th. So if you're listening to this before then, my apologies. You got to wait a week or two, but that's not too long. All right. And go to Amazon.com after you watch it. Buy the series, watch it, and then give it a 5-star review because you should be really nice. I think Season 7 is going to have about 26 short films in it. All just wonderful, amazing, pretty much all award-winning short films made by people who make them from their own hearts for the right reasons. No stinking committee of overpaid studio wonderful humans sat down and said, what's the best way to make money with the film? These people made short films because they needed to. It's like a need, right? So $7.99 for 10 episodes with 26 wonderful short films. It's not a big ask. So please watch the series. All right, if you want to learn more about the TV series or the podcast, go to discoverindiefilm.com. And if you want to check it out on social media, it's at DIFWins. I don't have my usual notes, but I still know it. So How to End a Conversation won that award. It won Outstanding Short Film, Arthouse Experimental. Which was, by the way, I didn't say this in the intro, that was a Filmmakers Award. We actually have people who had films at the festival previous years form their own jury, and then they choose awards for the shorts. It both relieves pressure from our other juries, but also I think it's kind of meaningful that came from your peers, that your peers chose you as Outstanding Short Film Arthouse Experimental, because it's a good jury. Like the Filmmakers Award is actually coming from a gender-balanced and racially balanced jury. And my apologies to the universe, but for now, the selection jury is not as balanced as I'd like it to be. So anyway, that's my confession. But if you want to learn more about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, go to ShermanOaksFF.com. It's at Sherman Oaks FF on social media. Every June, we have a film festival. That's called Film Invasion Los Angeles. Go to FilmInvasionLA.com. It's at Film Invasion LA on social media. I think I mentioned the TV series, the 2 festivals. I could be done, but I'll add, if you know how to use drugs responsibly, for shits and giggles, and because I like overworking myself, on April 20th, there will be the 3rd annual THC Cinema. Now that weed is legal in many states, particularly the one I'm in, we twice have gotten together at the same theater we hold these festivals, and for one night we just sit and watch about 90 minutes, a 90-minute block of shorts, which is something I never do at the festivals because I only want 30 to 40-minute blocks so that we can have Q&As. I'm not going to do Q&A stoned. So THC Cinema is really fun. So just go to thccinema.com or at THC Cinema on social media. Because, some films are really good high. I'm not sure how to, I would not program how to end a conversation on that one. Get a little too deep, a little too emotional. Thank you, Gregory Kasunich.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.